There is this really specific, almost intoxicating comfort in looking at a well-organized spreadsheet,
Oh, absolutely.
right? Like you look at an actuarial table or some predictive algorithm, and it gives you this illusion of control. It's sterile. It's perfectly predictable.
Yeah, I mean, a 99% probability means you can basically take it to the bank.
Exactly. But then you take all that math, all those carefully calculated probabilities, and you just throw them into an arena with like 10,000 screaming fans,
And blinding lights.
blinding lights, and just the sheer unadulterated chaos of live competitive art. And suddenly that spreadsheet just bursts into flames.
It absolutely disintegrates because, the moment you introduce the human element, the vulnerability of a live vocal, the staging the math breaks down entirely.
It really does.
You start trying to quantify raw emotion, and algorithms simply don't have the vocabulary for that.
And honestly, nowhere on this planet is that breakdown of logic more spectacular, more scrutinized, and frankly, more heavily sequined than the Eurovision Song Contest. So welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are pulling you into a world where statistical models just violently collide with 3-minute pop anthems.
It's going to be a lot of fun.
It is. We are looking at a massive and, I mean, deeply intimidating stack of sources today. We've got internal broadcaster announcements, translated lyrical sheets, betting odds, and just the raw historical data of the contest itself.
Which is a lot to sift through.
It's a mountain of data.
Yeah.
And all of it centers on one highly specific focal point, which is Belgium's entry into the Eurovision Song Contest 2026.
Which is such a fascinating case study, honestly, because as anyone who follows this contest knows, Eurovision is never just about a song.
No, not at all.
I mean, it hasn't been just about a song for decades. It's a geopolitical pressure cooker, it's a cultural mirror, and it's this staggering logistical undertaking.
Yeah, exactly.
So what we're doing today isn't a music review. We are performing a complete anatomy of a Eurovision campaign. We're looking at the infrastructure, the psychology, and the historical weight that an artist carries the second they step onto that stage.
Right. And the artist carrying that weight this year is a 30-year-old Belgian singer named Essyla, who is currently packing her bags for Vienna with a track titled Dancing on the Ice.
We're going to deconstruct her entire trajectory. We'll look at the linguistic and cultural duality of her origins, the intense lyrical dissonance of her track, and the unforgiving reality of those 2026 betting markets.
Because the betting markets are brutal this year.
Oh, they're completely brutal, and we also have to look at the incredibly volatile history of the contest itself. The goal is to understand the precise atmospheric pressure of the room Essyla is walking into on May 12, 2026.
Let's start right at the foundation, which is the artist herself. Because even her stage name, Essyla, is a puzzle piece.
It really is.
It's a massive clue into how she constructs her identity.
Yeah.
So her real name is Alice van Ysbeck. Essyla is simply Alice spelled backward.
It's a literal mirror image.
Exactly. So she was born on March 30th, 1996 in Perwez, which is situated right in Walloon, Brabant. But here's where it gets structurally fascinating. Her upbringing was deeply geographically split.
Right, the linguistic divide.
Yeah. Her father resides in Flanders, the Dutch-speaking northern half of the country, while her mother is in the French-speaking south, Walloon, Brabant.
The symmetry of that is just incredible when you view it through the lens of Belgium's structural approach to the contest.
How so?
Well, you have an artist whose very identity, a reverse name, a split geographic upbringing, perfectly mirrors the fractured reality of her country.
That's a great point.
We know how Belgium operates at Eurovision. The profound linguistic and cultural divisions dictate that the country literally alternates its broadcasting duties every single year.
Yeah, it flips back and forth.
Exactly. One year, the Flemish broadcaster VRT takes the reins. The next year, it's the Francophone broadcaster RTBF. And in 2026, it is RTBF's turn to step up to the plate.
So she is structurally a child of both sides of that broadcasting divide.
Yeah.
It's like she's culturally ambidextrous.
Culturally ambidextrous, I like that.
And musically, she is totally bilingual, too. She grew up steeped in French chanson, which makes total sense given the Walloon roots.
Right, which is all about dramatic, lyric-driven, theatrical storytelling.
Exactly. But then she goes to the Royal Superior Institute of Music and Pedagogy IMP in Namur, and her sonic palette just explodes.
She gets into totally different genres.
Yeah, she dives headfirst into American jazz, folk, rock, and funk. Now, I have to ask you, because we see this happen so often with artists who try to synthesize too many genres, Does having such an incredibly wide spread of influences risk making her sound diluted rather than distinct?
That's the classic trap, right?
Yeah. If you try to pull from the theatricality of chanson, the rhythm of funk, and the vocal elasticity of jazz, don't you end up being a master of none?
I actually look at it from the exact opposite angle, to be honest. I don't think it dilutes her. I think it arms her.
Okay, tell me more about that.
When you look at the modern landscape of the contest, the artists who fail are usually the ones who are rigidly locked into a single genre box because they can't adapt their delivery to the staging.
Oh, that makes sense.
Right. French chanson gives you a profound appreciation for the narrative. It teaches you how to act out a lyric, how to sell the tragedy or the triumph of a specific word.
But it doesn't always have a beat you can dance to.
Exactly. Chanson can sometimes lack a driving modern groove. That's where the jazz and funk influences come in. Funk gives you the rhythmic pocket,
Yeah.
and jazz gives you the vocal agility to improvise or adjust a melody live. When you fuse those elements, you don't get a diluted sound. You get a highly adaptable, technically proficient vocalist who can still sell a story.
That makes total sense.
Mhm.
It's not a mishmash, it's an arsenal. And that technical proficiency didn't just appear overnight.
No, she's been working at it for a while.
Right, which brings us straight into the sheer grind of her career, because Essyla has been in the trenches for years. Back in 2021, on the 9th season of the Voice Belgique, she was competing under her birth name, Alice.
Right, she was on Team Tafe Barrow.
Yeah, and she fights her way all the way to the final.
Yeah.
But she doesn't take the crown. She finishes as the runner-up. And who does she lose to? Jeremy Makidis.
Which is an incredibly loaded piece of history.
Why, no?
Because Jeremy Makis, as we all know, turns around the very next year and represents Belgium at Eurovision 2022 with Miss You, eventually finishing 19th in the grand final.
Exactly. I mean, think about the psychology of that. You were standing on that stage at The Voice, confetti falling for the other guy, and then you have to watch him get the ultimate golden ticket to the biggest stage in the world.
Well, you go back to the drawing board.
Yeah. That has to create a very specific kind of hunger. And it's not even like the Eurovision ecosystem was completely foreign to her at that point.
No, she already had some experience.
Right. In 2019, she was already in Gothenburg, Sweden, performing in the Eurovision Choir Contest as part of the choir Almakalia.
So she knows the scale of a European Broadcast Union production. She knows the lights, the cameras, the sheer mass of it all.
But she's always been just slightly off-center. She's part of a choir, or she's the runner-up.
And that off-center positioning really defined her immediate post-Voice career. She went to work as a backing vocalist. She toured with her former coach, Tafe Barrow, and with the rapper Ben Dido. And there is a massive psychological difference between being the frontwoman and being the backing vocalist.
Oh, for sure.
When you are singing backup, your entire job is to support the vision of someone else. You are studying stagecraft from the shadows.
You're learning the ropes.
Exactly. You are learning how a crowd reacts, how to manage stamina on a tour without the crushing pressure of the marquee having your name on it.
But then she finally steps out of those shadows. In 2023, she drops her solo EP, I'll Be Okay, and releases singles like Let You Go and Not My Kind of Dude.
She's building her solo identity.
Yeah, she is. And then we hit February 19th, 2026. The announcement drops. RTBF confirms that Essyla is going to Vienna.
But she didn't have to battle it out in a national televised final.
No, it was an internal selection. The boardroom picked her.
The dynamic of an internal selection is fascinating, especially when you parse her reaction to it. Following the announcement, her statement was incredibly raw.
What did she say?
She said, I don't fully realize. A part of me is still elsewhere, as if I were hiding the fact that I am the one who represents Belgium.
Wow.
Yeah. She spoke explicitly about the intense, almost paralyzing stress of wanting to make her country proud, calling it a childhood dream, but framing it almost as a burden not to disappoint.
Okay, let's unpack that, because I think an internal selection is actually a poisoned chalice.
Really? Why do you say that?
Well, on one hand, yes, you get a direct flight to Vienna. You bypass the absolute bloodbath of a national final. You don't have to risk public rejection in February.
Sure.
But on the other hand, you haven't been battle-tested by the domestic public. Look at the VRT strategy from last year with Red Sebastian in 2025.
Oh, so you had to work for it.
He had to bleed for it.
Yeah.
He had to fight through Eurosong 2025 with strobe lights. He had to look the Belgian public in the eye and earn their mandate.
That's a fair point.
When you're internally selected, it's like being drafted straight to the major leagues without ever playing a game in the minors. You have no idea if the home crowd actually likes your swing.
I wouldn't say it's like skipping the minors, because she did the work on The Voice and in her solo career.
Okay, true.
But I will say it's akin to being appointed as a national ambassador without a democratic vote. When a broadcaster selects you behind closed doors, you lack that initial vital mandate from the public.
Right.
A televised national final allows the domestic audience to take emotional ownership of your journey. They feel like they built you.
Yeah, they voted for you. They have skin in the game.
Exactly. When you are internally selected, you are handed to the public as a finished, non-negotiable product. You are telling the country, this is your voice now, without asking them.
That is a massive amount of pressure. And because she didn't have a live TV show to charm the audience with her personality week after week, the song has to do all of the heavy lifting.
Oh, absolutely.
The track itself is the first point of contact, the first real test of whether the public will rally behind her.
Precisely. And that brings us to the centerpiece of this entire operation, the song Dancing on the Ice.
Yes. Let's dissect this track. So, Essyla co-wrote it with Nicolas Davel, Emile Stengel, and Barbara Petition.
Yes.
From a lyrical perspective, the song is aggressively focused on empowerment and the modern young woman's experience. But it's not your standard run-of-the-mill empowerment anthem.
No, it's definitely not.
It is framed through a lens of intense, almost jarring contradictions.
The literary architecture of the lyrics is incredibly robust. The entire narrative is built on the violent juxtaposition of extreme, unbearable heat against deadly freezing cold.
Very vivid.
She opens the track by establishing a deeply tactile sense of heat. I got that summer on my skin. It burns, it lives, it burns within. That wheel is hot and I'm driving.
Right, you feel the heat.
We are instantly plunged into a world of fire, friction, momentum, and danger. But the very second we hit the chorus, the environment violently flips. She sings, I keep dancing on the ice where everything dies, frozen to the bone.
The sensory imagery is so visceral. You have these lines that feel almost cinematic, like sunscreen that sticks on wet bodies, ice cream melting on my blue jeans.
Yeah, it paints a picture of this sweaty, chaotic, youthful summer.
But then you have this rebellious, unapologetic undertone weaving through it all. She sings, I want love, but I'm not loyal. Call me queen, though I'm not royal.
It's defiant to the point of being provocative.
It really is. When I read through these translated lyrics, I couldn't help but wonder about the metaphor of the ice.
What did you make of it?
Is it about the precariousness of modern relationships? Like you're having this intense, sweaty summer romance, but the ground beneath you is literally frozen water.
Yeah.
And one wrong move, one crack, and you fall through into the abyss.
That is one way to read it. But if we factor in her deep roots in French chanson, a genre that practically invented musical fatalism, I think the metaphor is actually much broader.
Oh, really? How so?
Dancing on the ice where everything dies feels like a commentary on the precarious nature of youth, of rebellion, and frankly, of the music industry itself. Yeah. You are performing, you are moving, you are feeling the heat of the spotlight. But you are acutely aware that the platform beneath you is unstable. It is going to melt or it is going to break.
That's a terrifying thought.
But the defiance comes from the fact that she chooses to dance anyway. It's a statement of radical presence in the face of inevitable collapse.
I love that interpretation. And the fans are already trying to decode it, too. If we look at the metrics, the song currently holds 3.6 stars out of over 13,000 ratings on Eurovision World.
Which is pretty solid.
Yeah, and it's doing fine on domestic radio, peaking at 39 in Flanders and 36 in Wallonia. But the most telling piece of data about how this song is actually being perceived culturally came from a comment section on the official YouTube music video.
Oh, I know the one you're talking about.
Someone simply wrote, Erica Vickman Belga.
Now that is a critical piece of shorthand. Calling her the Belgian Erica Vickman instantly tells us exactly how this aesthetic is landing. It means the fans are reading this not as a straightforward pop song, but as something deeply camping, unapologetic, highly stylized, and perhaps a little polarizing.
It signals high-octane energy and just a complete refusal to play it safe.
Exactly.
But having a high-concept, highly metaphorical song about the duality of heat and deadly ice is one thing in a recording studio. Taking that concept and translating it to a live arena stage for millions of viewers, many of who do not speak English and won't catch the nuance of the lyrics, that requires a massive visual translator.
Oh, absolutely.
You can't just stand at a microphone stand. You have to physically build the metaphor.
And that is exactly where the logistical infrastructure of the campaign kicks in. Belgium has assembled a specific village, so to speak, to make this 3-minute fever dream intelligible to Europe.
Who do they have on the team?
For the staging in Vienna, they have enlisted David Van den Plas and Elena Gambardella as stage directors. Their entire mandate is to figure out how to visualize this clash of temperatures.
And who's joining her on stage?
Joining Essyla on stage are 4 dancers: Axel Remezzo, Julian Maniquet, Max Lucchina, and Tom Van de Wey.
You know, the fact that she is utilizing 4 male dancers is interesting in itself.
How so?
Well, it leans into that lyric, "Call me queen, though I'm not royal." She is positioning herself as the central, commanding figure amidst a structured, choreographed environment.
That's a great observation.
And speaking of the broader Belgian infrastructure, we have to talk about the anchors holding the broadcast together back home. Peter Vedever is returning to the commentary booth.
Right, he has been the voice of the contest in Flanders for over a decade.
But the real institutional weight comes from the spokesperson, the person who will appear on screen for 10 seconds during the grand final to read out Belgium's 12 points. It's Sandra Kim.
The gravitas of Sandra Kim in the context of Belgian Eurovision history just cannot be overstated.
She's a legend.
In 1986, she won the entire contest for Belgium with the song J'aime la vie, and she was only 13 years old.
Which is wild.
It's a statistical anomaly that will literally never be repeated because the European Broadcasting Union later altered the rules to mandate that all performers must be at least 16.
So she is an untouchable piece of trivia.
Exactly.
And she is the only win. Let's look at Belgium's broader track record. 66 participations since the contest's inception in 1956. 1 single victory.
Rough.
8 dead last finishes, 2 of which were the dreaded null points. Absolute 0.
Ouch.
Yeah. And if we look at the modern era, since the semifinals were introduced in 2004, Belgium has only managed to qualify for the grand final 9 out of 21 times.
See, Sandra Kim isn't just a former winner. She is the sole proprietor of Belgian Eurovision glory.
Exactly. I was trying to imagine the psychological weight of this for Essyla. Imagine going to your high school reunion and the only person anyone ever talks about is the quarterback who won the state championship.
Right.
But it wasn't last year. It was exactly 40 years ago, 1986 to 2026. Does having Sandra Kim as the spokesperson serve as a genuine motivation for Essyla, or is she just this massive, intimidating albatross hanging around the neck of the entire campaign?
It is entirely a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
From a PR perspective, having Sandra Kim read the points is a brilliant nod to history. It reminds the rest of Europe that Belgium is a foundational pillar of this contest.
Okay, that makes sense.
But for the artist, yes, it is a glaring spotlight on a 4-decade drought. It is a reminder that you are stepping into a legacy defined by one historic high and decades of frustration.
That's a heavy burden.
However, I would argue that the historical shadow of Sandra Kim is nothing compared to the immediate, brutal, quantitative shadow cast by the modern betting markets.
Oh boy.
Historical pressure is abstract. Betting odds are a mathematical reality.
Then let's dive into that math. Let's look at the spreadsheet that is currently predicting Essyla's fate.
Yeah.
The draw has placed Belgium into semifinal 1, which goes live on May 12, 2026. And she has been drawn to perform in the second half of the show, specifically in running order slot 11.
Now, in the grand scheme of Eurovision mechanics, slot 11 in the second half is traditionally seen as an advantage.
Because it's later in the show.
Yes. You are performing later in the broadcast, which means the song is fresher in the minds of the audience when the voting windows open. You avoid the death trap of opening the show or getting lost in the mid-tempo slog of slots 4 through 6.
Right.
But even with a favorable running order, the statistical models for semifinal 1 are completely ruthless toward Belgium.
Ruthless is putting it mildly. Let's look at the numbers. The bookmakers are predicting that powerhouses like Finland, Greece, Sweden, and Israel are essentially guaranteed to advance.
Yeah, they're the heavy hitters.
They have crunched the numbers on Essyla and given Belgium a mere 38% chance to qualify. That mathematically places them 13th out of 15 countries in that semifinal.
And as we know, only the top 10 survive to see Saturday night.
Right. And if you zoom out and look at the overall winner odds for the grand final, it gets even colder. The markets give Belgium a less than 1% chance of actually taking the trophy.
We need to dissect how the bookmakers arrive at a sub 1% probability, because they aren't just pulling these numbers out of thin air.
What are they looking at?
They are synthesizing massive data sets, historical voting blocks, diaspora populations, early streaming numbers, fan poll aggregations, and eventually rehearsal footage.
Wow, it's that scientific.
Yes. When they look at semifinal 1, they see a bloodbath of titans. The clear favorite, not just for the semifinal, but to win the entire contest, is Finland.
Oh,
We
yeah.
are talking about Linda Lampinius and Pete Parkkonen with the song Leckenheiten. The odds makers give them a 93% chance to qualify and a staggering 31% chance to win the whole thing.
A 31% win probability in a field of nearly 40 countries is almost unheard of this early on.
It's massive.
It means the algorithm believes Finland has functionally already won, barring a live disaster. And the field is stacked with other giants.
Who else is up there?
You have France sending Monroe with Regard, Denmark with Søren Torpegaard Lund singing Før vi går hjem, and Australia bringing a legitimate, established global superstar, Delta Goodrem, with a track called Eclipse.
And this is where the specific mechanics of the Eurovision voting system create an impossible squeeze for a song like Dancing on the Ice.
Explain that for the listener.
The contest is decided by a 50-50 split between professional juries from the music industry and the public televote.
Okay.
The bookmakers predict that Australia, wielding Delta Goodrem's veteran, polished vocal delivery, will sweep the jury vote at 28%. Juries reward technical perfection, flawless staging, and pristine composition.
But the public televote doesn't care about a perfectly executed bridge.
Exactly.
The public wants visceral impact. They want spectacle, extreme emotion, or they're driven by complex geopolitical momentum. The betting markets are favoring Israel non Betten with Michelle to win the televote at 27%. So if you look at the board, Essyla is trapped in the middle. She has a highly stylized, metaphorical pop track that might be too chaotic for the strict technical parameters of the juries, but perhaps not quite massive enough to overwhelm the sheer spectacle or momentum of the televote magnets.
It's a tough spot to be in.
It begs a deeply philosophical question about the modern era of the contest. Do these hyper-accurate betting markets completely ruin the magic?
What do you mean?
I mean, if you are Essyla, sitting in your rehearsal space in Perwez, looking at a spreadsheet that confidently states you have a less than 1% chance of achieving your childhood dream, how do you even justify getting on the plane to Vienna?
You get on the plane because those very same spreadsheets have been spectacularly historically wrong before.
That's true.
The algorithm cannot account for the alchemy of a live performance connecting with a crowd in real time. The contest is a living, breathing, deeply volatile organism.
It really is.
To understand why an artist with a 1% chance still fights, we have to look at the historical chaos, the scandals, and the statistical anomalies that define this event.
The trivia surrounding this contest is just unparalleled. The EBU rulebook is basically written in pencil because things go wrong so often.
Oh, constantly.
Look at the sheer extremes of what has been put on that stage. In 2015, Finland entered the shortest song in the history of the contest, Aina mun pite, by the punk band Perdi Kurikin Nimi Päivät.
I remember that.
It clocked in at exactly 1 minute and 27 seconds of pure, unfiltered punk aggression. Now, contrast that with Italy in
A
1957.
complete opposite.
They set a song called Corde della mia chitarra that dragged on for 5 minutes and 9 seconds. It was so exhausting that the organizers instituted the strict 3-minute rule that governs the contest to this day.
And those extremes apply to vocal capabilities as well. The algorithm can't predict when an artist is going to shatter a ceiling.
Right.
In 2021, Israel's Eden Aline hit a B6 whistle note live on stage. That is the highest note ever successfully produced in the history of the broadcast.
Wow.
And in 2015, Russia's entry A Million Voices became the first song in history to score over 300 points and still not win the contest. That's insane.
It proved that you can absolutely shatter historical statistical records and still go home empty-handed because someone else shattered them slightly more.
But the volatility isn't just about high notes and song lengths. The contest is a geopolitical lightning rod. And keeping strictly to the facts from our sources, the history of interventions is staggering.
It really is a lot to take in.
Just 2 years ago, in 2024, we saw the unprecedented disqualification of the Dutch artist Joost Klein on the actual day of the grand final.
Right.
And in 2021, the entire nation of Belarus was expelled from the contest because the lyrics they submitted were deemed to be mocking the domestic pro-democracy movement.
The intersection of lyrical content and political reality is a constant battleground. In 2009, Georgia withdrew entirely, rather than change their song We Don't Want to Put In, which the EBU ruled was a thinly veiled jab at Vladimir Putin.
Just an incredibly tense situation. And just recently, in 2024, we saw Israel have 2 separate songs, October Rain and Dance Forever, rejected by the Broadcasting Union for political undertones before they finally submitted Hurricane, which was accepted.
And it goes back decades. The contest has been a proxy for international outrage for half a century.
Oh, yeah.
In 1969, Austria fully boycotted the contest simply because the host nation, Spain, was ruled by the dictator Francisco Franco.
Wow.
The very next year, in 1970, Austria, Denmark, Finland, Norway, Portugal, and Sweden all coordinated a massive boycott because they were furious over the voting structure that allowed a ridiculous four-way tie for the win in 1969.
A four-way tie is just a logistical nightmare.
But of all the historical data points we dug through, my absolute favorite, the one that perfectly encapsulates why the math doesn't matter, is the Jordan broadcast incident of 1978.
Oh, the 1978 broadcast is the ultimate testament to the unpredictable power of the contest.
It really is. So Jordan was broadcasting the event live, but as the voting progressed, it became mathematically obvious that Israel was going to win the entire thing.
Right.
The Jordanian broadcaster refused to show it. They literally cut the live feed, broadcast a static picture of some flowers, and then later went on the evening news and told their citizens that Belgium had won the contest.
That's incredible.
It just completely fabricated the reality of the outcome.
Think about the implications of that anecdote. It proves that this is not just a song competition. It is a massive platform for cultural presence.
Absolutely.
It is an arena where simply standing on the stage, forcing your voice and your image into the living rooms of millions of people across continents is an inherently radical act.
Yeah.
It's a place where rules are constantly written, challenged, and rewritten in real time. And amid all of that chaos, amid the politics and the boycotts, it remains the ultimate launch pad.
Exactly. It launched ABB in 1974. It launched Celine Dion when she won for Switzerland in 1988.
Julio Iglesias, too.
Yes. Even a 7-minute interval act in Dublin in 1994 turned into Riverdance, a billion-dollar global phenomenon. This contest is like the Olympics, a reality TV show, and a high-stakes UN summit, all crashing into each other at high speed while draped in sequence.
That is the perfect description.
And that historical volatility brings us right back to Essyla. It explains exactly why her journey matters, regardless of what the bookmakers predict.
To synthesize everything we have unpacked today, you have a 30-year-old woman from Perwez whose very name is a reflection of a duality she has carried her entire life.
Right.
She is a vocalist forged in the storytelling tradition of French chanson, but armed with the rhythmic swagger of American funk. She spent years in the shadows, singing backup, learning the craft, only to be thrust directly into the blazing spotlight by a boardroom decision that bypassed the public vote entirely.
She is walking into Vienna, carrying a deeply metaphorical track about the violent collision of extreme heat and deadly ice. She is using that song to explore complex themes of loyalty, youthful rebellion, and empowerment.
And she is doing all of this on a stage where the mathematical models loudly and confidently proclaim she will fail.
Yeah, she is fighting an incredibly steep uphill battle against statistical behemoths, like Finland's 31% win probability.
Against Delta Goodrum's undeniable jury appeal.
And against the crushing weight of a 40-year national drought, overseen by the ghost of Sandra Kim's 1986 victory.
But the beauty of the contest, and the reason we watch, is that the algorithm doesn't get the final say. Essyla's choice to pack her bags, to step onto that stage and to perform Dancing on the Ice is a testament to the sheer, unquantifiable value of showing up.
It really is.
It is about committing entirely to the 3 minutes you are allotted, knowing full well that the platform beneath you is unstable, knowing that the odds are stacked against you, and choosing to dance anyway.
Which leaves us with a final thought to take away from this entire deep dive for you listening at home. We live in an increasingly hyper-quantified world.
We do.
We are surrounded by algorithms, predictive models, and actuarial tables that attempt to tell us the outcome of our endeavors before we even begin. They tell us our chances of succeeding at a new career, a new relationship, a new creative project.
Everything is mapped out.
Exactly. But if a spreadsheet tells you that you have a less than 1% chance of success, is the truest, most human form of rebellion simply choosing to create your art anyway?
That's the real question.
Does knowing that the odds are overwhelmingly against you diminish the value of the performance, or does it make the courage to stand under the lights and sing your truth even more profound?
Something to really think about.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the anatomy of a Eurovision campaign. Keep questioning the algorithms and keep seeking out the fascinating human stories behind the noise.